that. So so that's a key thing because that hand fatigue does happen. I will do that with my medium as well, and when I lay it down with brushes, it will. I use a light touch. So if you don't use enough medium, you're forced to kind of push harder. I do that with everything. Drawing, I'll use the darker type of pencil if I need to instead of pushing harder. Um, I just didn't want. I saw a lot of my friends like get whatever it is like tendonitis in their hands and stuff, and I didn't want to get that. So okay, bouncing lights of different color. How do I handle it? So at that point, so right here I've got lights and darks. Like if I've got like a ton of bounce light, what I will tend to do is like so I have like the light coming from this direction, then we have our light area and we have our shadows. It's very simple in this one. If I had a crazy bounce light coming in, like let's say like a neon light, I would just treat it as two separate sort of systems, right? So the shadows would be here, and then we'd get like this neon effect on this side, and we'd have that. Now that would be my lights sort of for that side, and so I actually will even create sort of separate value systems for both in my head. And again, this is all just like I'm working somewhat based on these technical things, but it's a lot of it is done intuitively as well. But I do tend to kind of break it up into those two different things. Now, if the reflected light is not very strong, like let's say he was getting reflected light and it looked something similar to this or something, like at a spot that was pretty bright, but the rest it got pretty dark, I wouldn't even worry about that. What I would do is probably have this, I would probably have this just be part of the shadows, and I would actually reduce that value of that reflected light so that the shadows were more cohesive. So it'd still be there. I'd still have that there, but I'd just darken it so that it would read as reflected light, but would still be sort of cohesive. Like if I come out here, see, it should look darker. So that's the idea. So that's sort of how I deal with that, and it can get complex when you got like four light sources or something like craziness going on. But in general, like the simpler your lighting can be, the more it's going to read, the better it's going to read. So, um, in old egg tempera, yes, the glass palette. That's what I have too. I'll show you guys that. In old egg tempera paintings, the base shadow tone for the skin was commonly was an olive green. Do you think there's opportunities to choose more unusual colors while painting skin? Great color, great color, great color. Great question. That's really, really good. Yes, I absolutely do. Everybody thinks of skin as this. Everybody thinks of skin as just this, and then you get a little bit lighter, and you get a little bit lighter, and it's not that way. It's so dynamic, and it changes so much. And there's like the reason why me putting down purples and blues and stuff like that it works here is because the light goes through skin. It goes through skin, bounces out, it hits other things that are inside there. Like you have veins, you have like a rash, you have blood, like I was showing you with all those textures. Like I mean, you have all that stuff going on. So for me, it's I look at it as multiple layers, and I think of it as a multiple layered sort of surface. So it's always dynamic. It's always changing. Like I said, you could take someone and put them in north light, and their skin looks totally different in incandescent light, or by candlelight, or in club lighting, or it looks totally different. So because of that, yeah, you can try out. I mean, you can literally do anything. And remember, the way something looks is largely dependent on context. So let's look at Vance Kovacs. Vance Kovacs is like I call him like the master of grays. He's like a master of grays. Now, Marshall Vandriff talks about having color. Or actually, that was Marshall Vandriff. That was he may have talked about it. But, William Whitaker's the one that told me this: having color next to non-color. So you have a lot of grays, and you put them next to something that has color, so that the colorful thing looks more colorful because of that. So Vance Kovacs is like the king of grays. So like if you look at this, and you look in this guy's chest, like these things, you think like, wow, they're really colorful. Those things are really colorful, and they are colorful, but they're not that colorful. Watch. So if we bring that in, and I kind of bring it off to the side, it's actually not as colorful as you would think. Look, you when you look at this, you imagine that these colors are like here, right? It looks like they're there. Like you imagine that they are. And this one especially is so gray. And when you see it there, though, it feels like it's like this. This red even looks super intense, right? It is, but it could be here, right? He could have done this, come in and done that. And so what he was able to do was really use context to make the colors work. And look at this guy's skin tone. I mean, this is like grayish, like it's like bluish gray, and I mean, this isn't even like that. That's gray. It almost looks zombie-like or whatever. Now, that's part necessarily. He might be going for that kind of a thing, but you can use whatever color scheme you want for skin, absolutely. And if they relate to each other, if the cheeks get warmer, if the key sort of indicators are there, it'll look good. So yeah, I love that. I like that. That's a really good question. Totally. And putting a green underneath skin is going to have a different feel than putting something warm underneath. Like me having this gray background changes the way these warms look crazy warm. If I take this and I come here and I put this down, but let's just grab this here and I put something warm underneath it. Let's say I do this and put this underneath it, right? Now this ends up looking more gray. It's kind of like, whoa, that's like moving towards the grays. But if I put it under a blue, all of a sudden this looks like really warm, you know. So it just depends. Context is huge. Context is huge. So how am I blending the colors in the skin ball? I am doing. So I will paint the transition, right? So this is in general how I'll work. I will paint the transition like this. I'll say like, here's this value, here's this value, here's this one, here's this one, and then there's this one, right? So I'll do that. But then what I will do is like try to find a value that's in between the two of them. So like here's a darker value. I just want to go a little bit lighter, and I'll drop that. I'll actually paint the transition. So you can see I've started out there already like, okay, this is good. This is like already a transition, right? So I'll do that. It already looks like it's transitioning somewhat, and I'm just doing 100% opacity here. Oh, sorry. Let's go a little bit brighter. Like that. So that's at like 100% opacity. That could be a little bit darker. Like that. And so these strokes are not blended at all per se, but there's a little bit more of a transition there. Now I will come in with like, let's say like 20% opacity, and I will color pick from this side, drop that transition and color pick from right here. I'll choose something that will be in between, right? So I want something in between here and here. So what I do is at 20% opacity, come here and lay this down, and then I color pick from that transition, and I can create that sort of, so I'll lay that down. Then I'll color pick from that transition somewhere that will let me lay down more strokes that will blend that. So this will come in like this. I'll grab this, put it over top at 20% opacity, then grab this and do that same thing. Like this. And so that way I create that transition from one value to another. And I can decide, I don't even have to do that. I can just come in and put this value down and put this value down and then put that value down and put that one down. And just have a whole, I don't even have to blend at all if I come and put in between values in between. So I would come here, put values in between like this. Oops, that's not dark enough. See, that's not an in-between value. That's too dark. That's too close to the darkest one. So I've got to find it in between. That's still too light. So I come in, boom. That's in between the two. This is just gradually, it's a little bit, needs to get a little bit darker. This is, if you're not going to blend at all, this is a little bit tricky. Like you've got to find that value that's just right if you're not going to blend at all. But this does come into play when we want to do something expressive though. So we drop that in, go a little bit lighter, drop that in, and you see how it's starting to blend? Like that side, if I back up, it looks like a soft edge there. Like just this section looks like a soft edge. And this stuff is how I started, but it looks like a soft edge. So you can do that in oil as well, which is sort of how I've functioned. But blending a little bit is fine. But I don't want to kill the brush stroke by just blending, like, you know. And a lot of times I've noticed that people will have, they'll build up their stuff like this, which is fine. Like that's fine for digital. Like if you want to build it up like that, but it definitely has a very particular look to it. And so if you want that look, hey, good, that's awesome. But if you don't want that look, it's very distinctive and very digital and sort of, you know, maybe you want something that looks a little more painted, you know, but. Let's see. Yes, noodles. I've got a whole class tomorrow, and again I'll be putting all this stuff up on YouTube. If you type exclamation mark and then schedule, you see my schedule, and I've actually got an oil painting class that I'm gonna answer all those and talk about all that stuff. It's gonna be fun. We're doing that tomorrow morning. But even if you can't go to that class for some reason, it'll be up here on Twitch, and then I'll put it on my YouTube channel as well, so you'll get that info. I want to take the sting off people going into oil paints, but yes, I do use a glass palette and canvas. I use C13 or what is it? Clausen's. I think it's portrait. It's the 13 type 13, whatever it is, like the portrait one. That's what I use. I like as many times primed as possible, and linen is what I use. So it's expensive. It's annoying. That's expensive, but you can get some good ones. You can get some good ones. Like, you know, I mean, you can use cotton too if you want. Just make sure it's primed really well. You just don't want something absorbent, and you don't want something super thick and grainy. Like, you want the paint to go on fairly smooth. You want a little bit of grab, and you know. You seem to have mainly hard edges. How do you approach applying the different edge types? Yes. So that probably was a good example of what I'm doing. But this is all hard edges right now. So I'm going to jump in and once I usually like to keep hard edges. I don't want to think about the edges at first. I'm just moving stuff around. So I will actually show you that. See you, Dan. Have a good day, man. Okay. Somebody was asking about landscapes too. Yeah, landscapes are a little different, but it's very similar to what I would get here. Landscapes. I like to work like background, midground to foreground. Like I like to think about it in those terms, and it's sort of like the overlapping of shapes. The overlapping of shapes is there's so much that's communicated there, but there's a lot to talk about with landscape. It's different. Like communicating a landscape, like stuff going back in space there is different than this. So, oh, you do Muay Thai? Okay, nice. Yeah, I did Muay Thai too. We did Muay Thai at our gym and Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm admittedly not very good at Muay Thai, but I have a blast doing it. Those are some hot years, yeah. Okay, nice. You had the luck to study with someone from there. Oh, Seth Haverkamp. Okay. Hey, thanks so much. I'm glad you're liking the stream. That's great. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, that place is awesome. That place is awesome, and um, it's probably not that far from me here in Pennsylvania. I should stop. Well, I can't stop by now probably, but Howard Lyon. Hey, all right, check it out, guys. Okay, I got to show you guys this art. All right, check it out because I know Howard Lyon. Check it out. You want to talk about being able to paint like a boss? There you go. Nice to see you in here. Look at that. Look at that. That's what I'm talking about. So yeah, so you can just direct the oil painting questions right to Howard Lyon. Because yeah, that's pretty awesome. So very, very cool stuff. Look at that. Look at that. So skin tone wise, all of that. Look at the colors that are showing up. This is exactly what I was talking about. And look at all the colors that are existing back here. It's not just blue shifted for the background, right? It's green to blue to purple to orange. This is somebody that has studied color, sees it for what it is, like what I was saying. So yeah, this is awesome. Awesome. Glad you're here. Okay, let's see. Yeah, break the internet. We're breaking the internet. Okay, so let me. I think I'm caught up mostly. Let me see if I can. Oh, did Twitch go down again? It looks like it's up now. I'm really sorry, guys. I don't know I don't understand the reasoning. Hold on. Let me see. Should be back up. You guys okay? Can you guys see? Yeah. Oh, Rillo, hopefully, what the heck? I just want to see. Somebody give me a heads up in the chat if you're seeing this and you guys are hearing me okay. We can talk about. I can. Dang it! Why is Twitch doing that? You guys with me now? Um, yes, I will put this up on YouTube. I will put this up on YouTube. You guys give me now. Okay. Oh, the Zoom events are limited to a set number. Oh yeah, no. Yeah, I don't want to do that. I want everybody to come. Yeah. Listen, I mean, we're probably hitting Twitch up like we're probably slamming it. So, don't worry. Everybody. What we're talking about, like, it will. Okay, very, very good point. Okay, here, let me see. I want to make sure you guys can hear me. Yeah. Why the heck is that doing that? Let's see. Let me refresh this, and we'll see if where we're at. Okay, good. Okay, good. You guys hear me? Okay, great. Thanks. Sorry. I just wanted to make sure because I didn't know. Like, it looks fine. Everything looks fine on my end, so I just don't know, like when when it's being weird. So, all right, good. So don't worry about that. Okay. So the rendering with 20%, I basically will create. Like, I'll show you. I create a transition. I will paint the transition, and then if I want a softer edge, I will go 20%, paint over top of this, and then I'll color pick from that transition and work over top of it. And if I don't want it to be labored, I will, not spend too long there. I don't want it to build up. I don't want to build it up like this, and sort of be like a watercolor thing. I like to paint the transitions as much as I can in, a full opacity. So, what's up, Johnny Bravo? Okay, deal is the circus, and we're the clowns. Yeah, that's right. Hashtag philosopher. Yeah. All right, so let's keep rolling. All right, so let's get rolling on Sam. Now I'm going to use this as a reference, like I said. So I had this sort of like he has a little bit more of like an olive skin tone. Let's start busting that out. Now here, thankfully, digitally, we can come underneath, and I can sort of lay that down. I want to go full opacity there. I know there's some weirdness with with those lighter areas. That's okay. But I'm going to start range area, sort of that olive type of skin tone. Now there's some warmer areas that I'm noticing. Right, so I'm gonna take that and emphasize that, and it's gonna look. Speaking of clowns, clowns is a good a good reference there. We're gonna pull from clowns here. So I'm gonna make this look. I'm gonna be emphasizing the colors and blocking this in. Let me show you this painting by Richard Schmid. Okay. All right. Let me show you. There's a painting demo that he did, and I want to show. Here it is. It's this one. So if he's got this, yeah. Look at how he starts this demo, right? So this is where he begins. Look at how the colors are really like very emphasized, very clear. He starts it off like that. But he's actually being more careful than it looks here. Much more careful, and he's measuring like these distances really don't change much. This neck changes a little bit, but look at that. So you see, that's where he ends up, and that's where it sort of settles once the painting is done. But he's starting off by emphasizing these colors quite a bit. So I'm starting more from a mid-range place, and I'm going to be emphasizing the colors quite a bit. So it's going to end up looking a little clownish in this process. That's okay. You know, if it looks a little clownish, nope, no problem. We can get there in the end. And actually, these shadows could be a little bit warmer too. They're a little bit in some spots. They're a little bit warmer, but in some spots it gets a little bit cooler. But like I said, I'm going to emphasize what I'm seeing here, and I'm not just gonna. I'm gonna do like what they were doing in Studio Caminati, where I'm going to stick with the value scheme that's there, but I'm gonna like so I see like kind of a purple there, kind of, right? So I'm gonna come in and get that laid down like that. I need to keep the values in mind as well, but this is where I find that most people have an issue. They have an issue actually coming in and laying down the skin tones in a darker value like this. But remember, values have to be relational. So I will end up lightening this. I will lighten this. But trust me, it helps to start from the mid-range and work out. I have found that it helps to do that. So for me personally, you know, not for everybody, of course, but for me it helps. So, okay. Okay, it doesn't go down for long when it does go. Okay, good. Glad to hear it. Yeah, it's probably a server thing. I'm imagining with Twitch, like with the delay. So the delay is, I'm only using like what is it, like 3% of my computer. So I don't think it's on my end. Twitch may be having a delay. It's kind of unfortunately the maybe I mean I guess it could be my connection, but I don't think so. I don't think it's my connection. It seems fine on my end, but I even had like Comcast come out and like replace the lines and really just do a bunch to make it better. But so now like look, I'm sticking to a color here. I've got a warmer color here. Like again, I'm staying in that mid range. I will end up coming like this, and like I was saying, it goes a little bit more towards the yellows when it creeps up here. I will get those values in. But for now, I'm starting with, like I said, something that is probably going to look a little bit like clownish. And I get this in, and there's actually a little bit of a sort of like this sort of type of color that's showing up in there. Now this might look crazy. It's like, why are you using that? You know, why are you using those colors? It looks like, you know, he's got some scary makeup on or something. You know, the reason I do that is because I really like the colors start to, as you start to, you know, blend and you start to render and you start to do things, the colors get a little more dull. And I guess again, this is like a carryover for me from oil painting, but I always sort of err on that side because it's, as I tend to work up a painting, it gets a little bit more dull. So I like to really punch those colors at first, and it actually gets a little bit more reddish and a little bit in a lot of the transition areas, like over here, it gets a little bit more this reddish sort of orange, and then we definitely have some warmer areas for the ears. We need a hot color for the hot rendered ear, don't we? Got some hot rendered ears. We need a hot color. And so it starts to like relationally kind of begin to work when you see this like a little bit. And I'm making color choices. Like I can't talk about every single color choice that I'm making. I'm making a lot of color choices that come from experience. So it's a little bit tricky to talk about each individual one because I have to make them more quickly. But I do start this way where it's much more intense. And this will get lighter. And actually, when it does get lighter, it's a little bit more red in that area there, sort of like that. This will get tamed down quite a bit. We will come in with these values and come over top and be able to work this up. And there are, of course, there's highlights here. I'm not overly concerned about that right now. This is fairly bright under here. And so I'm protecting the drawing like where I need to, but I'm not like worrying if it's just slightly, you know, if I need to redo the drawing a little bit in some areas, I'm not overly concerned. So this and this. Here and here, and then I want some grays for this shirt, just something to sorry, my nose, my allergies have been actually going crazy lately. I don't know why. But yeah, I just want something sort of like a placeholder. This is not as warm. This is definitely cooler, and there's a little bit of warmth. It's not the same as like a straight up black. Maybe it is a little bit more towards the warm side. Yeah, that reads a little bit better. So you see, even grays can have a color shift. This is darker, and that is definitely a little bit warmer, a little bit darker over there. So again, this looks wacky. I know it looks really weird, but this is how we start, and then we start assigning values as well, and start adjusting for values. Now, listen, you can't have an expressive portrait and have a bunch of really interesting edges, interesting things mingling with one another. You can't have that if you do this from the beginning. If you do this from the beginning and blend everything to death, you can't have interesting strokes. So, I mean, you can, but they don't, you don't give yourself room for it to just sit there. So, part of the reason why I'm laying down strokes like this and I'm thinking about all this stuff and putting it down very high opacity and stuff like that, the reason I'm doing that is because I want that look at the end. I want there to be an expressive look. I want there to be something that's very expressive and the strokes to be very interesting. And if I can't start with uninteresting strokes and then hope that I end up with interesting strokes, you know what I mean? So that's the key thing. Now look at this eye. This eye is dark. Dark in there. It is not up here, right? It's not there. I'm going to give them like laser eyes, you know? So it's here. It's going to shift a little bit more towards this. It's going to be a little bit more desaturated. And it's going to be darker than you think. Something more like that is going to be closer to where it needs to be. So again, this gets out of whack, sort of, and looks weird, you know, mid-process. That's okay. I'm okay with that. You got to be okay with that. And you have to just be thinking of those shapes and keeping those things in mind. And you'll see as we progress through this and as we start adjusting things that I will pull it into place. But the great part about digital is that you have Control Z. You have Control Z and you have like the ability to just put things on a layer. You know, you can put things on layers. So it's really funny to me because you would think that everyone would be very, very risky with oil when they're painting with digital. Like they would just try a bunch of things and be really experimental and stuff like that. And a lot of people do, but I found that actually a lot of people are scared to do that in digital because there's methods that have worked for them in the past, and so they sort of stick to those methods. And what's interesting is that I found that a lot of people aren't as adventurous when they're laying down strokes because they know their method and they have like a particular way that they do things. And so if you're working digital, it's like you can hit Control Z, you can delete that whole layer, like go for it, make a stroke in one shot, see what happens, you know, and that's the beauty of digital. You know, oils make you pay like tenfold for it if you make a mistake. Like if you have to step back in oils, it's really, really annoying. It's frustrating and annoying, and it's not pleasant if you have to scrape things down, redo it. It's fine, you can do it, you know, but it's just not. That's the part that kind of is crappy about oils. Like it's just not nice to and it dries and it sinks in, and it just, you know, is tough. I should actually. That reminds me, I should probably like have a painting tomorrow that's sunken in so I can use that as an example. I didn't think to do that, but that would be a really good example. So, yeah, well, I know. You know what's funny? You know what's funny, Ninja, about Comcast coming out and doing that? You know the issue, like we have no choice. So we have Comcast and that's it. Like I can't shoot anything but Comcast. Like that's it. I have no idea why. But there's like, I mean, when I say there's no other companies, I mean, literally, I can't choose anything else. So they could make my internet like $500 a month, and I probably couldn't do anything because there's no other companies. It's crazy. So I know but they had to come out 3 times. The first 2 times there were people that didn't know what they were doing. The last time this guy really, you know, he came in, he's like replaced all the lines. He like made it all clean in there, like where it was all, you know, going through my house and everything. It was awesome. Like he was so good. So this looks crazy, I know, but give it time. We will work it up, and we will get there. But you've got to start off intense, and you got to start off like this, and we'll find our way from there. But I definitely don't want it to look like he's got lipstick on or something like that. So I've got to be careful with that. But this actually gets a bit darker here. You'll see me jumping around a lot too. Like I like to jump around and move to different areas. Like see, I'm moving down here now. And the reason I do that is because I want to stay fresh, and keeping your eye fresh, like you just bounce around from area to area, and you can keep your eye much more fresh. So now, when I get to this point, okay, I've got the colors indicated. I've got the, you know, like a lot of this sort of blocked in. It's weird, I know, weird looking, but I've got a fair amount of it. I want to indicate a couple other things. This is actually a fairly warm white of the eye. Doesn't maybe look like that, but it is. This actually comes up. I'm going to adjust that eye. All these shapes are going to change slightly as well, but this side is definitely warmer and darker. Yeah, that side of the eye is definitely warmer and darker, something more like that. And I promise the drawing will get better. All this will start to pull together. But I have a couple different options now. So I could make the whole thing more loose and expressive. Like, let's look at Scott Burdick. So I can make the whole thing really expressive and like very loose like him. Like he's got, not even like that one, but he's got some that are just very, very, very loose. Like, see, like there's a lot of strokes like sitting on there. He does smooth out the face a little bit. But there's times when he doesn't even do that. Like it's just the whole thing, just a bunch of strokes just planted on there. And I can make the whole thing really, thick and sort of, rough like that. Or I could do sort of an in-between, which is what Sargent does. So Sargent oftentimes would do this. What he would do is actually, let's find a better one. Let's look at the Sargent portrait painting. Let's look at this. Yeah. So check this out, right? So let's bring this in. I use this as an example a lot. So if you look at this, you can imagine how Sargent sort of started this painting, right? He's got these sockets like this. He's got this shadow value, like this is exactly what I was talking about, seeing it in terms of the shapes of value. Coming in like this. And you can imagine this whole side was pretty much a mid-range. And let's just take out that highlight. You probably didn't put that highlight in right away. Look at that. If you get rid of that little stroke there, you just basically have almost like a pre-rendered area. And I didn't even do anything to the side of the nose. Look. This side of the nose, I didn't even do anything to that. It's just all just one value like that. So you can see he would do stuff like this and get the whole face sort of roughly indicated. Then he would come back over and say, okay, I'm going to put a darker stroke here on the eyebrow or whatever. And he'd go whoop, like that and put that stroke in and then let it sit. And then he would get this right here and put it in and let it sit. But the reason he was able to do that is because he sort of like pre-rendered the area. So I've got these rougher strokes here. I'll do sort of a modified version and do sort of like what Sargent was doing or what he did and sort of began to pre-render these areas and get them very roughly indicated, and then we'll put some strokes over top of it. But these rougher strokes that are underneath, even if I blend out some of them, you're still going to see them come through in certain areas, and I give myself the option at that point. Like, I can leave it with this really rough stroke, or I can blend it a bit more. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to sort of pre-render these areas, get things in general working, and I'm just going to use 20% opacity. Let's do like, I'm going to switch between, like 40% opacity, 20% opacity, that kind of a thing. And I'm just going to sort of pre-render this and get these in place. And certain spots are going to stay very loose. Certain spots are going to, be a little bit eradicated, like it'll be a little bit softer. But in general, you're going to see things start pulled together when I get to this stage. So I can come in here, come down like this. If I would not have stated this as strongly, these colors and things like that, I wouldn't be able to get to this point. So this is 40% opacity. I am also using different pressure sensitivity on my Wacom. So I'm paying attention to that is what I mean. Like I'm using pressure sensitivity on there and not just pressing super hard. Certain times I'm pressing harder, certain times I'm pressing a little bit softer. And sort of building this up. Like I said, pre-rendering the area, the eye doesn't look right. All this stuff is a little bit weird. That's fine. Not worried about that. But you'll start to see him emerge here and start to see it somewhat come to life at this point. And again, like if I'm not talking about stuff and I'm going to be, if I'm not talking people through it, this kind of stuff happens really, really fast. I can do a portrait like this pretty fast. But I want to walk you guys through. I want it to be like a manageable speed so you can see what I'm doing. It makes sense. Okay. Because I like being able to explain what's happening and talk about it, and you guys have questions too. I like to answer the questions, which I will go back and answer soon. I'll hit that up, hit the chat up soon. Okay, this right here. This definitely is like more of like a reddish. It's very faint, but it's definitely there. It's almost like a reddish purple kind of show up there, but I need lighter value. Yeah, that's why I need it. Oops, even later than that. That's better. It's a little bit more like that, and I'll blend over top of that. Maybe got a bit too bright value, but that's the idea. The color there. And now you start to see him come out a bit more. Let's do this side. Let's work this out. And again, I'm going to be approaching this more like Sargent, where I'm going to save my expressive strokes for the finalizing of the edges in each of these areas, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Edges being the transition of one value to another. So just coming in here, and this is exactly how I would work in oils. I would work exactly the same way. I would lay down these areas of like not pure color, but like emphasized color or whatever you want to say, and then I would come in and I would adjust it like this. And I'm still thinking about the drawing. I'm still thinking about the edges. I'm still thinking about all that stuff. And I think I always do this. I make the nose too low, and I make the mouth. I think the mouth is a bit too low. Let's move that up now before we get too far in to the process. So let's take this and just move it up a bit. That's better. I know it's showing through strangely at the bottom, but that's too high. So let's go like right there. I think is pretty good. And he's got kind of a weird expression right now. It's all right. We'll work on that. Okay, so this will come in here. So you can already see a lot of those colors coming through and a lot of those choices coming through. And this is where like when I'm doing a commission or I'm like working on a painting for someone or whatever. I've done some portrait commissions over the years, and this is where they come in like during the stage, and I don't unless they're an artist, I don't let them see the process, this part, because people look at this and they get genuinely worried, which I would probably get genuinely worried too if I was looking at this part of the process, because it just looks like it's not going to come together, like it's just going to be weird, you know, and people lose faith in when they see that this part of the process, because it just ends up looking really odd. So I usually will ban people from seeing this this part of the process. I'll be like, nah, I'll show you when I'm a little bit further along. They're like, oh, I don't mind. People say they don't mind, and they do. They always mind. They're like, they can't they can't imagine what it will look like. So I don't blame them. It's, if you haven't made paintings and you came in and you saw this, it would be a little disconcerting. I gotta be honest. So see this oranger like kind of warmer area kind of creeps in down here. You got that kind of coming up right there. And I think this is pretty similar to the one over there, so we'll get that in like that. And see all those colors, like I know, like I'm blending it, right? I'm blending it, but only to a certain point. And those colors are still showing through. A lot of those are still showing through, and I have the choice now to leave those wherever I want to leave them, and and not mess with them. And I'll come in and do the other side of things that I was talking about, like how Sargent would do. But we're finalizing things now, and all of these choices I'm making, there's drawing issues that are showing up, and I'm correcting. I'm doing a lot of it at the same time, which is what becomes really demanding. But okay, let me just I'm gonna look through real quick and get some. Let's back up a bit so you can sort of see where I'm headed, and see how the colors, they end up almost being like, you're like, well, they look like the original. You know, they look similar to the original, and how did that end up looking similar to the original? That's sort of the question, because it's just weird, because it looked so garish in a second before that. How does it end up looking more like the original? But okay, so let's see here. Let me see what you guys are saying. Yeah, I think Twitch actually has like maybe even a half or a minute delay, depending on what their servers are doing. Okay. Just everyone saying thank you. Of course, absolutely. I love doing this. Okay, let's see. Any tips on when when you know the colors and values are right? As a beginner, it's hard to know when you're close without a teacher overseeing your work. Yes. Yeah, Daryl. Yeah, I know what you mean. So like, you get to a point where you're like, you want to observe color and see it properly, but you know, how do you learn to see something properly when you can't see it properly? So you do it and you're like, oh, it looks good to me, and then yeah. So having a teacher really does help in that regard. It really does. But I think also, like, if you give yourself a day and you come back to it and you look at it after, like, give yourself some time and work on multiple projects and come back to it and look at the colors, and somebody that isn't artistically trained, well, you can even ask them too. They'll look at it and say, oh, the color's a little bit off. This is a little bit weird right here. This isn't quite the same red. Like, if you tell somebody, be super nitpicky about what color is here or what's not. And the other thing that I used to do, and it was really so that I could learn how to mix properly. I wouldn't. It's really only a technical exercise. It's not, but this is not something you want to do all the time. But those little paint swatches from the hardware store. Let me show you. Let's see. So these things, like, yeah, like this is what I was thinking of. Like, I would grab some of these, and I would actually just like try to match that in oils. You can do the same thing, just to like, and then when you really start to be able to perceive the colors properly, then go to a place you want to start modifying them. So, sorry, my allergies. So like, Here, I'll show you. So remember I was showing you on that painting of my wife's ear? This one? Like, this is right away, I want to make sure I understood what the color relationships were, what the relationships were between this color and this one. And so I went and did it in a completely different color scheme. So it's warmer in these spots, just like it's warmer here, but it's a different color range, different color scheme. So I think that really helps. Hey, Jerry, what's up? Oh, you're seeing the advances? Yeah. Yeah, in between the races. That's awesome. Um, we only have Spectrum. We always lose connection on weekends when people get off. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Spectrum is rough. It's funny. Like we have no option but Comcast here. That's it. So I wish we had. I was like, can we have fiber optic? I actually even talked to like a government person. They were like, no, they were kind of telling me it's like deeply entrenched. Like it's not going to change anytime soon. Like I think they're working kind of with the politicians and keeping this area sort of under wraps. So I don't know. I don't know if that's the case, but either way, I know I can't get anything different. But my brother-in-law always has fiber optic. I'm like, oh, I'm so jealous. Okay. When you go cooler or warmer theory-wise in coloring, yeah. So really, like the best place to start, if you guys want to understand color and you're wondering how to do that, it's absolutely study from reality, study from references. That's the way to do it because I can look here and I'm looking for, okay, it gets a little bit warmer here. Like you can kind of see it over here, but I'm emphasizing it a lot more, of course. It gets a little bit more pinkish there. It gets a little bit more purple under here. Sort of, it's kind of hard to see, but to me, that's like a little more purple. Yeah, you really can't see that, but but that's what's happening with when color pick you can't see it, but with my eye I can see it. This is warmer right here, a little bit more reddish warm. This is more of a like cooler brown, and so you start observing, and the more you start looking for that stuff, the more you will begin to see it more clearly. Um, so yeah, so hopefully that helps. I think studying from reality, and I think there is something to be said for actually mixing it up in oil paint, because if you do mix something in oil paint, it's you're kind of forced to think about what color it is. When you just color pick digitally, it works, it's fine, but you're not forced to think about what that color relationship is, and you just have to be more aware. I think when you're working with digital stuff, like you just have to be more aware because it's very easy to gloss over certain things and just and just kind of plow forward and just color pick. So like color picking is you don't really ever want to do it. Like just color pick from the image. Like if you're having trouble seeing what the color is, it can help, but you wanna learn to see those colors because even when I'm working from reality, I don't want to copy reality. I'm not trying to copy what I see. That's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is actually understand the relationships of what I see and then capture those relationships in considering my tools, considering the limitations I have, considering the goals I have for what I'm doing, all that stuff. So I rarely can copy reality, and I usually don't want to. So that's sort of the idea. Sergeant's great. Where can we find your brushes? This is, I don't have like my brushes because I just have like actually a hodgepodge of different ones. A lot of the brushes I use are the Kyle brush ones, like the ones he has on the cloud. I use those Kyle brush ones. I use some various ones. I'm just grabbing mine from other people. You can see I've got Houston Sharp, like Justin Gerard, like Gregor Rutkowski, like Piotr Yablonsky. I've got like I've got just like different sets that I'll pull from, but most of it is Kyle Brush's stuff. Most of it is his stuff. So, yeah, I like have different brushes for different purposes. Sometimes I want it a little bit more textural, and sometimes I want it. Okay, so I'm gonna actually start to blend this side a little bit more because then I want to start getting into the strokes and finalizing things. And I know that I know that might seem a little bit weird, but there's a lot of strokes. Once I get this blended a bit more, and I get the general values and colors in the right place, I can start actually grabbing some of the more interesting brushes and begin to really start going to town on this. This needs to be a lighter value. Yeah, that's a lighter value. And again, I'm going to be making drawing changes as I progress. So one of the reasons why it looks a little bit weird is because I haven't finalized the drawing yet because I'm going to be working on that as I move forward. So it's okay to move the eye a little bit. And there's usually to get a likeness as well, you have to have such minuscule adjustments that it kind of works to your advantage to just move things as you go because you're going to have to make so many adjustments that it's not worth trying to lock it in with a drawing when it's like a millimeter. It needs to change like a millimeter one way or something like that. This eye is a little bit off. I'm noticing it now. It's a little bit low. Let's move it up. This is the other thing about digital. That's just so good, right? Let's just move it up, and I think it's going to be more like that-ish. And I think that's better. It's closer. Yeah, it's closer. And then I've noticed that you can tell a lot by like when you put the pupil down. Like if the eyes are reading it, it reads okay. If it reads okay there, it'll typically work pretty well. But you can make it look like they're kind of cross-eyed, like what she kind of looks like right now. And then you know you've got the eye a little bit in the wrong spot. But okay, so let's start moving forward. Let's start sort of move in and start adjusting some of these some of these edges. So I'm gonna get a little bit more specific here. Now look, see this eyebrow? I need to make sure that I have the right values underneath this eyebrow. But once I do, which I think is pretty close here, it's a little bit of a warmer area. I'm gonna drop that down. But then I've got a little bit more of a highlight here. This transitions over very smoothly. But now I can put this over top of it. So I'm gonna grab this crazy brush, which looks like this. And I want to get the right value. So I don't want to come in like this and put that on top. That's way too dark of a value. But this simulates, if I use a really light touch, it simulates an eyebrow pretty well. Look at that. Right? So this comes in. Look, I've got a darker patch right there on the eyebrow. And a little bit of a darker patch right there. So that's what I'm going to go for. I'm going to take this rougher brush and start adjusting that. And then I don't need to necessarily even just leave that stroke. I can come in and adjust it. Drop this in. It's a little bit lighter right here. The highlights are sort of surrounding that, so I'm going to drop those in. And I'll come back, and I can make adjustments to this stroke. But I want to leave it somewhat loose like that. Because this comes in here. And I'm adjusting these edges based on the drawing that's there. So I feel pretty good about the structure just overall. There are some things that need to change. I think the pupil will need to be a little bit more in like that. I do want it to be a bit darker. I'm going to get rid of the pupil for a sec. That's way too bright. So again, I'm looking for the value that I need in that area. There's also a darker rim sort of around it. And the eyes are sort of a resting point. So I like to render that a tiny bit more than I will render the other areas. And let's see. This is going to be a little bit of a rougher indication there. And see, look, this dark line that I've got over top of here is not what's there in reality. In reality, it's much more broken up. And this line is much closer to that. So I'm making these adjustments as we go. And this is actually a little more of a slate blue color. It's kind of making his eyes look a little bit green. And I want to shift away from that. It's actually more of a gray, sort of. More like that, yeah. And then the pupils are a bit warmer. So that's there. Although that might be is that too dark compared? Yeah, I think that's slightly too dark, but very close. And then there's more of a broken edge right here. And this is definitely darker. And then, you know, the highlight is very minimal. I'm just gonna come over top of this, and it's just barely indicated, so we can put something like that on there. Let's put this value in this color. And again, we want interesting strokes here. We don't just want run-of-the-mill strokes. So we don't. It's okay if it drifts a bit. You know, I can come over that and adjust it. This is a little bit too much looking like, it looks too much like an eyelash there. And what's this? Yeah, that's interesting. So let's get some of this. Let's just move to a little bit of a different area to stay fresh. Let's get some of this hair. Now, why am I using this brush? Like, why use this brush for here? This hair, like, if you look at the shape of the highlights, you've got some brighter highlights like showing up in there, and they aren't really. It's not really set up like there's hairs. You know, it's not like hairs like this. Like, you can use that brush like that, but it doesn't. The light and dark shapes don't really look like that. It actually just looks like, you know, an area like this, and then it's kind of a rough sort of, almost like veiny, distribution of the. It's almost like that, you know, like that sort of thing. So that's what I want to try to capture in that area. So I'll make sure that the values work for what I'm doing. But this is the a Kyle brush one, I think. This is the palette knife one, and this one here is Gouache Go Go Tilt. Those are like my two main ones that I've been using, I think, up to this point. So now I'm simulating that breakup pattern for the hair. This brush is simulating that pretty well. But there's transition values. So I can go in here and I can say, all right, let me lower the opacity of this brush and keep that, or I can switch to the other brush, come back and, you know, adjust that till it's, you know, got the right value going on in there. Let's see if we can adjust this. Now the trick comes in with, and the tough part about all this is of course maintaining the proportion and making things look right while you're doing it. Here, let's get, like I said, I like to jump around area to area, so we've got that highlight there, but I want it to be a little bit more textural. That highlight in the original is a bit more textural, so I'll put that down and then I'll carve it back. Or like that. We're going to work our way up to that accuracy. This cuts through a bit. This actually just bleeds straight into the area around. It's not, I mean, it's a very lost edge. So that, to me, I don't feel like I need to prioritize that area too much. It's mostly a lost edge. Here we go. Okay, let me take some other questions, and I can be going over them while I'm you know, working on this. Let's see. Okay. You mentioned that you love washing while painting two mediums. You're right. Does your approach to painting change? Yes, it totally changes. That's a good question. So the question is like, you know, should you experiment more, or should you find something that kind of fits what you do? I think you should do both. I mean, something's going to push you in a different direction, and so you like that's a good thing. But also, it's okay to settle and on something that like, you know, hey, I like this medium. This works for me. You know, I definitely do that. I definitely don't just only use things that I'm uncomfortable with or something. I'm okay with, you know, I like experimentation and I like all that. I'm okay with all that. But I definitely this is definitely more like this. I made this too rosy, I think. But I definitely think like it depends what your personality is, right? So I'm a pretty adventurous person, and so I like to try new things, and I'm not afraid to make something that looks like garbage, you know. And you know it does sometimes, and that's okay. So I would say like you need a bit of that, but you also need to kind of if you jump around too much, you end up you know not sort of being a specialist in everything. So um, you know, so you want to sort of specialize and find something that's comfortable for you that works with your method. But I definitely don't think you should be limited to only one methodology. You know, I think you should. Everybody's going to have their go-to. Everybody's going to have their go-to, and that's totally fine. But if you have to do it that way, and that's the only way you can work, and every other way doesn't actually work out, then you probably are lacking some fundamentals because the tool shouldn't matter quite as much as that. So that's probably what I would say. I would say like if using another medium, like it's going to be hard for you, but if it totally throws you for a complete loop and like you can't do anything with it, then it probably is that there's some sort of fundamental that's not in place. Does that make sense? So it sort of exposes that you don't have a fundamental understanding of value and edge and all of that because you should be able to do it with anything. It's kind of like if I give somebody who's a great draftsman, I give them a crayon, they can draw something great, right? So crayons are crappy for you know a pro artist. It's like it's tough to use, you know, and it's kind of crappy. But if I give them that, you know, they'll be able to make a great painting out of it. You know, pretty much everybody, you know, at Lightbox could do something cool with a crayon if you gave it to them. It'd actually be kind of a cool thing. But but you know, so it's not the tool that makes the difference. It's not the tool that makes the difference. It's your understanding and your knowledge. So, anyways, but like I said, everybody has their go-to. Everybody has their thing. So, you know, like oils and gouache, they're quite a bit different. I have to really place the strokes and leave it with gouache, and you have to sort of have a plan. You have to work in a little bit of a different way. But I like that because, and then you can take that back to oils or take the oil sort of methodology to gouache, or you can figure those things out that way, and you'll see similarities, but you'll also see differences, and you know, I don't know. That tends to be like the way that I think about it. That's a good question now. Okay, so evaluating this. Value and edgewise, that needs to be a little bit different. Let's go over in here. Okay, let's see. There's a bit of this value showing up in here, like this inner value. It's a little bit lighter though. And this is wider. And what I'm gonna do now is just back up. So I've started rendering a little bit more, and I'm primarily looking at this section, like this section over here, and I'm gonna sort of finish as I go outwards. So this section's all weird, I know, but this section is I'm sort of finishing as I go, and I'm looking for the overall impression of what's happening there, and trying to get a good idea of how I can progress forward with this and move to the other side. So again I'm using this as sort of a gauge, and I would build outwards from there. But because I had that good foundation of values, colors, all that stuff, this is actually a little bit brighter like this. Because I built that good foundation, now I can feel a little bit more confident rendering and even leaving, like doing this and leaving this area a little bit more loose. because I've got a good system down underneath that, so the impression will be there. It'll read. Okay, let's do this. It's a bit brighter right here. Okay. Let's go a bit brighter right here. And I like to, I like to just, if I put down a stroke and it's interesting, like if I come in and I put down this stroke and it's interesting and it works, I just like to leave it. Like, sometimes, it's not even the most descriptive of what was there, but if it worked in the image, I just like to keep it. So a lot of times I'm evaluating a stroke based on the aesthetics of the stroke as well, not just on whether it communicates exactly what was there on the original. If it works, then I leave it, basically. I don't feel like I need to stick to the original so much, to the point where, if I make an interesting stroke, I can't adjust it. So I've still got time to move things. I've still got, ways to kind of adjust and look at things. So oftentimes, like moving an eye, like I will wait and come back to something. Like I know this eye might have to move or change a little bit, but coming back to it is going to allow me to see a little bit more clearly. And this comes in like this. This is a little bit more orange. Okay. All right, now let me go back. Let me see if you guys have any other questions as well. How do you decide when a piece is finished? Good question. Yeah, like who's it? Is it Michelangelo that said you never finish a piece, you just like, or a painting, you just abandon it? So yeah, I think for me, like I decide when it's I'm just gonna be ruining it. Like if something else that I would do would just basically ruin it, then I know I'm done. So when I can't make it any better, like that's when, like very easily, or if making it better would require redoing the whole thing, like really completely restructuring it. Typically, that's an issue with something that I've had in the beginning. If that happens, like in the beginning of the painting or the drawing, and if that happens, then I probably failed there somewhere. But if I can't resolve it and like it's just I'm gonna make it worse, then I'm done. If there's something I can do to make it better, I want to try to make it better. I mean, in a more pragmatic sense, like if you're working on something and the deadline's there, you're done. So if the deadline's there, you're done, like regardless. So if you've got a deadline for an illustration or a painting or whatever, and you hit that deadline, you're done. You gotta stop. So, but for me, like, yeah, I think it's done when it's achieved what I wanted it to achieve. A lot of times, like you'll be surprised, like you'll be working on a composition and you'll think, okay, I'm gonna need to put this in to get it to read. I'm gonna need this. I'm gonna need that, and then you do all that, and all of a sudden, or you do some of that, you start heading down that path, and then you realize, oh, I could just leave this in like this. I could just leave this one area in, and that's all I need, and that's all I need to do. And it works perfect, and you find that like mid process, and if that's the case, don't do anything else. Just stop. If you need to do more to get it to read, properly, oh, I didn't realize, but this little area needs a little bit of a bump, and this needs something here, and if that's the case, then just do it if you need to, but it really depends on the goal for that particular work of art. I think that's a lot of it. A lot of it is like, if it's a concept art piece, is the idea communicated? If it's an illustration, like, does the scene make sense? Is it achieving what you wanted, like the emotional effect that you wanted? Are you going to mess it up if you spend more time on it? Is it going to lessen the emotional impact, raise it, whatever, that sort of thing? And it's always the question, but it's really tough. I know sometimes it's tough to. It can be really easy to overwork something. Now, when I'm working on something like this and I'm deciding when to stop in an area, does it read, right? Does it read properly? Do the values read properly? Do the colors read properly? Do the edges read properly? And that's what I'm looking for. If I can get like a simple stroke and all of that reads really nicely, then I can stop and feel really confident stopping, which is great. If I need a bit more info, then I will throw in that info and and just say, oh, the viewer needs a bit more info here. And that's all just down to taste, really. I mean, you could put a couple strokes down on a canvas and just call it done. And there's some people that could really pick up on that and know what you were trying to do. And then there's other people that just wouldn't get it. And so yeah, it's a tricky question, but hopefully that helps. It really depends on your goal for the painting, what you're trying to achieve, and how it's reading, But I always try to keep it as simple as possible, regardless of what I'm doing, because I view it sort of like public speaking or something in a sense, because it's like you guys aren't gonna remember what I said over these 5 hours. like you're not going to remember one thing in particular that I said, right? So it's like the accumulation of the information and all that that's going to stick with you. But you're not going to remember. You'll remember maybe a couple key things, but you won't remember, anything like super specific about what I said probably. But if I said it, if all I did was talk this whole time I painted, and then I said like 2 paragraphs worth of stuff, you'd remember that. You'd remember those 2 paragraphs because it was simple and straightforward. And if I said portraits are blah 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 blah, like, and I just had a statement like that I could make in just two paragraphs or 2 sentences, you'd really remember it. So I like to do that with painting. I like it to be as simple as possible. I also like the viewer to sort of fill in information. I like the information to be like the viewer to have to finish an area sort of visually, and I like that because it's sort of it throws the viewer into the process. Right now, the viewer's in the process, and now the viewer's a part of it, and they've got to sort of finish off the image and say, okay, hey, what's going on with this ear over here? Like, it's just a couple strokes, but like, oh, okay, I think I see what that is. It kind of cuts in here, and that makes sense. That's that part of the ear that comes back like that, and that sort of a thing. Like, it brings the viewer in and allows them to sort of be involved in the painting process. I think, I don't know. So I like to keep things a little bit looser for that reason. I am not the type of person though that thinks a tight painting is a bad one. They're just different. Like, it's just and whatever I like tight paintings, I like loose paintings, I like all different types of paintings. It just needs to be a good painting. It's like I like fancy food, I like burgers, I like ribs, I like all that stuff. It just needs to be done well. If they're good ribs, I will eat them up. If they are crappy ribs, then I don't want anything to do with them. So same with art as well, and same with styles of art, I think. Oh, this gets pinkish at the kind of pinkish purple at the chin down here. So you can start to see it pull together. So now for like the next hour, what I'm going to be doing, I didn't know if I had that other reference of Violet because I didn't know how far I would get. But it was good. There's a bunch of good questions and stuff. So, but what I'm going to be doing from now till the end is just refining this and doing exactly what I was saying. Where I'm adding areas that need more, so the viewer has more description. And like this eye is, like, in my opinion, could I leave it that loose? Yeah, but it's not really descriptive of what's there, and it's not. It looks weird, right? It looks odd. It would be off-putting for most viewers to see the eye like that, and especially up against this eye, context-wise, it would look so odd. So that is going to be adjusted a bit. That's going to be adjusted a bit, and I'm going to add a little bit more to that so it defines things a little bit more, because I think the viewer would need that. So I could leave it super loose like that, but it's actually wrong in a lot of areas too. So I wouldn't want to do that. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense. How do you see so many different colors in skin? Is there a trick to focus? Yeah, the best way I can describe it, because I've got this question quite a bit. Like, I think the best way I could describe it is you look for a hint of something, right? So chefs have to do this, right? So chefs have to do this. Like, you'll hear a chef like talking about something, and they'll say like, well, there's like kind of like, or even like a perfume person, right? They'll say like, they say all those funny things, right? They'll say like, it smells like sandalwood and licorice and a dog's paw, and like they say all these like crazy things that you're like, I don't smell all that at all. The whole thing is they've trained themselves to look for, like, not look for, but to smell those individual smells, and sort of they become more sensitive to it. So I noticed this when my brother and I I was in a band when I was younger, and so I told my brother, I was like, we should record an album together. We should just do something fun. And so we did it together. We just used my computer, and nowadays you can do that, so which is great. But we did it, and we just had like a single track like Focusrite thing that we used. And so I was like, okay, I got to learn how to engineer and do audio engineering. And I had no clue what I was listening to. Like, I was like reading these books, and it was like, well, you have to listen for this frequency range, and you have to think about this, and the bass occurs in this frequency range, and this instrument occurs in this one, and you have to really be thinking about that. And I just couldn't hear it. It just all sounded the same to me. And then I had some guys who were really good. I would listen to them, and they'd say, you hear this spike, and it kind of sounds harsh here. It's kind of something. I wouldn't hear it. I was just like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And the same thing happened for me in art. Like, I remember Ron Lemon saying to me, a great artist too, really, really good artist, Ron Lemon, and he was saying to me at a workshop, he was saying, it's a similar situation to this, where I would ask him, I'd say, well, I don't understand why you put that color there, because that doesn't make any sense, and I don't see that. And he was like, oh, you don't see that? He said, well, look at that blue is cooler, or that blue is warmer than that blue over there. And I was like, how can a blue be warmer than another blue? I was like, it's blue. How could it be? I was like, how can it be warm or cool? I was like, I don't get this. I was like, I don't get it. Like, I said that same exact thing. I said that same thing. Like, I don't get what you're saying, and he was like, you just have to spend time looking for the colors and listening to people talk about them, and then you start to see things differently. My teacher actually said that to me too. She actually said, I remember when I asked her, she was painting the leg of a model when the model was in there, and she was painting it, and she put like this purple down, and I was like, I don't see a purple there at all. So like, how? I said, no. I said, okay, wait. I said, can I interrupt you? She goes, yeah. I said, why did you put that purple there? And she said, well, I see it. And I said, I don't understand. I said, what do you mean you see it? I was like, I don't see that. I was like, that looks gray to me. I was like, that looks gray. She goes, well, it's got like a, like it's purple to me. It's got like a purple like shift to it. And what she couldn't sort of, she was doing it more based on instinct, but what she couldn't sort of vocalize at the time was that that she sort of got a hint of a color, and then she took that and emphasized it. And she just learned to pick up on those very subtle cues of color. And really, the truth is, everybody sees color a bit differently. So you might end up with different colors on this than I would, so that's okay. But she just took that and she emphasized it and made it more intense and really committed, said this is a purple, and then put it in that way. And it worked because the value was in the right spot. So that's the easiest way to sort of break down like observing colors and how you go about it, because it's tough. It's very, very difficult. It is like, and especially when you're starting out, like you can't see it, but just know that there's nothing wrong with you. Like I remember feeling like, man, there's something wrong with me. Like I just can't see color. Like I can't see color properly. And it's not that. It's not that. It's very much the case that you just have to get used to looking for it and seeing it. And once you get used to looking for it and you begin to really, study that, and go get a painting of Monet's that looks similar to an area you're in, right? So like I would go and look at a Sargent painting, and I would go home and look at a model. And yeah, I didn't have that model in front of me, but I knew it wasn't that different. I was like, it can't be that different. I was like, the models that Sargent's looking at, like I understand the lighting that he's working in and all that stuff. It can't be that different. And it really wasn't, and I realized that it was his adjustments and what he was doing that made the difference. Like he was adjusting the values, he was intensifying the colors, like I was talking about. He was doing all of that stuff, and that's really what made the difference. So once I started realizing that, I started making adjustments to what I saw, and I started, feeling the freedom really to kind of, push the colors a bit more. I felt the freedom to do that after I started seeing Sargent kind of manipulate it quite a bit. So this is definitely off, this eye. I believe, let's make it easier on ourselves and just move this. I believe it's more like this. And I'm going to adjust the nose in between here too. But I believe it's more like that-ish. And I'm going to make adjustments to this too, but I think it's more like that. It's very close to where we had it, but that's going to be there. Now this nose will come over a bit more. Like that. Then we're going to have this highlight on here. Good questions, though. Those are really good questions you guys are having. This will come down a bit more. Yeah, this is the lower, I believe. This eyelid. Yeah, I think this eye is lower, actually. It's up a bit too high. So let's adjust this. It's always the far eye. The far eye was always the annoying one. Whatever the far eye is, it always gives you trouble. But part of it, too, is like there's not a lot of context in this area yet as well. So I do need to adjust this and change it, but there's not a lot of context in this area either. So if we can get this far eye locked down, we'll be all right. Okay. And, like I said, the likeness is not, it might not be 100%, but it's fairly close. Like, it's close-ish. So that's fine. It's definitely, his eyes are definitely wider apart. So let me try that. Let me just try widening these. And again, when you have looser strokes like this too, I can widen the eyes, and it's actually not a big deal. Because the strokes are a little bit looser, it actually doesn't mess things up, because they kind of stitch into one another a little bit easier. Let's see. And I want to, I think it would be more, I think it's a little bit smaller on this side as well. This side is a bit smaller. And you see, even though my painting's loose, right? My painting is very, very loose, and the strokes are really loose, but I'm not approaching it like, oh, my painting's loose, so I'm just going to put it wherever, And no, I'm being very, very careful about the drawing. Even though it's a very loose painting, I'm still not forgetting about the drawing. I'm paying attention to all that and making sure that things are in the right place. And I might need to adjust it again. That's fine. But I think this far eye needs to be adjusted. This is probably lower, actually. Yeah, I think the overall eye is in the right place here, but this needs to move over. That needs to move over a little bit. This is where digital is helpful too. I'd be doing, like, if I do a portrait commission for somebody, I I tell them it's gonna be a while. Like I tell them like to get it nailed, it's like by the millimeter to get it to be their likeness. So I make sure I tell the person like it's gonna take a while. Because you can imagine moving this stuff around with oils, and it gets really tough to nail it and get it exactly right. But I think this is lower. Yeah, I'm gonna adjust that. So okay, while I'm working on this, I want to show you guys. That's a little bit better. A little bit better. Okay. Yeah, let me see what you guys are saying too. Hello, friends of mine from art school. We are third and fourth years. Are taking your texture course on schools together. We plan to critique each other's work. What sort of things do we talk about when critiquing, depicting textures? Ooh, good question. I've actually got a section tomorrow on textures. And I've got a class, you guys don't know, on schoolism, on textures. And that is like I would say if you're critiquing each other and you want to kind of like as a I'm trying to think of like a quick way to say it. I would say really look at it based on the overall impression. Like if the overall impression, if you're getting the impression of the texture, then it's got the feel of it. Like I know that's like it's sort of an ambiguous term, but if you can look at it, like I mean it sounds funny, but that's really the most important thing. Like if you look at it and it has the feel of that, then you've nailed it and you've got it. If it doesn't have the feel of it, then you can start working backwards, right? So you start working backwards and you say, well, this doesn't really feel like gold. It doesn't feel like it's slimy. It looks wet, but it doesn't look slimy. And then you start saying, okay, well, why doesn't it look slimy? Okay, look at John's on his class and adjust this, and you start evaluating it based on that. But you work backwards from the overall impression. So start with the overall impression, and then ask yourself if you're getting that sense from it, and if you are, then you can sort of figure out why it is and why it isn't working, and it just helps, basing things on that general impression. So there's so much that comes down to that. It's like you forget to look at it just overall. Just look at it. Just take a look at it and just ask yourself whether it actually is getting that same sort of effect. If you want something to look slimy, it looks wet but it doesn't look slimy, then you need to figure out what is different. And if it's like a burlap sack that you're painting but doesn't really look rough, okay, why? Why doesn't it look rough? And figure that out and really try to narrow it down that way. That's the best way to sort of approach it, I think. Okay, so it's amazing too because I actually painted my mother-in-law. I've painted my mother-in-law before, and I'll show you guys that painting. And as I'm painting Sam, my son, like it's like I'm looking at her. The same color I mixed in oils for her eyes, I mixed for him. It's really weird. I remember that. Okay, here, take a look. Here's my mother-in-law, this painting. And I made hers more intense, but you can see that painting there that I did of her. I did this a while ago too. I should probably do another one, but I did this here, and it's funny. It's like a lot of the similar mixtures for this, or similar colors and values. So this is going to get a little bit darker up here, and little things matter with stuff like this. Little things matter. So I'm going to come in here, adjust the overall shape. Okay, so let's make this a little bit dark up here. Okay. And see how like I shuffled that around and really thought about the drawing. And this isn't a perfect likeness, not at all. This is not a perfect likeness, but it's getting closer. And I'm always willing to shuffle that stuff around. I'm always willing to put it in a little bit of a different place to get a better sense of what's happening. You always have to be able to kind of go back to that and say, all right, the drawing's a little bit off. Let me adjust that, Now look, this area of the eyebrow, I'm going to get I'm going to get a much more expressive stroke here. Let's get that sort of, oops, that was a little too far. This is where you can take a risk digitally. Doesn't hurt anything to take that risk. I can always just Control Z if I need to. Okay. Thank you for everybody that's following too. I really appreciate that. You guys will see when I'm live, and we'll keep it going. I think after doing this and seeing the interest everybody has, I'll definitely keep streaming after Lightbox. I mean, I would stream on a very limited basis before, but it'd be cool if we could get all of us gathered on here. And we've got a Discord too, as well. We've got a Discord if you guys want to check that out. I think that I have the link coming up. I think it comes up every once in a while in the chat, so you guys can let me know if that's not the case. But so see all those colors that looked crazy and like wacky. now are beginning to kind of settle in and sort of make sense in the mix. And we're able to do that while keeping it very loose. And this gets a little bit more desaturated. Comes in here like this. I'm going to adjust this eye. It's like this highlight is way too strong. It's making that eyes like stand out a lot. Okay, this comes in. This eye is, it's a bit too, yeah, that dark is a bit too. I've got to come up higher. It's a bit too dark up there, but also it's. Yeah, so it's amazing like how much it's just like what I'm really thinking about in a painting like this is really just it's a lot of the fundamentals. Proportion, value, edge, and color. I just have to keep going back to that. Okay, let me see what you guys are saying. Let's see here. Okay, how do you capture the essence of a person? Creepy Amy, my favorite name on Twitch. Creepy Amy, it's the best. Creepy Amy's in the stream, creeping, just creeping. So that's tricky, right? So that is a multi-step process for me. So Sargent didn't like knowing anything about the people he was painting. I'm like the opposite, right? So I'm the opposite. I want to know more about the people that I'm painting. And like my mother-in-law, you know, I use a little bit of harder edges because she's a little bit more like she's a pretty rigid person. Like you know, she is a very dedicated person, very consistent person. Like she exercises every day without fail. Like she will exercise till the day she dies, like every day, and she just sticks with it. You know, she like never doesn't exercise, and she's so reliable. You know, so reliable. The flip side of that is that it's you know there's a rigidness there and like and all of that. So how do I convey that in a portrait, right? So how do I convey that in a portrait of someone? I convey that in a portrait of someone by maybe using a little bit of harder edges in certain spots, maybe around her eyes, like adjusting the relationships of the edges around the eyes so that it's a little bit harder, you know, or maybe if somebody has a more bubbly personality, maybe I will use more colors, you know, more colors and more of that side of things. Like you have to sort of, for me, I feel like I need to know them a little bit. Sargent, like I said, didn't want to know anything. He didn't want to know anything about the people he was painting. But I feel like I need to know who they are and in order to inject that into the painting. So the tricky part is turning something that is not a technical thing. It's more of like an emotional thing. Like turning that into something that is technical is very difficult. So, you know, it's like you're a character designer, like for Pixar or something like that. And it's like how do you design, you know, if you're doing what was the movie Inside Out, right? So you're doing Inside Out. How do you design sadness? How do you design you know, the what is it, disgust and anger? I mean, anger seems a little bit more straightforward, you know, and all that, but then you start getting it down to the individual choices and it's not so straightforward, you know, you because then you don't want to be derivative and you don't want, you know, there's a lot of things that go into it. So so it's really tricky. It's tricky conveying something that is really essentially emotional as a technical thing. And so you have to break it down to that. That's the only way you can do it is by breaking it down that way and saying that's not the only way you could do it. You could just function based on emotion and sort of do it by subconscious. Like a lot of artists will work based on subconscious. I just can't do that. You know, someone like Jeff Jones or like someone like that, I feel like did work a lot just based on their subconscious. Like they just had really, you know, interesting minds, and things would work and they wouldn't work for them, and they would just sort of explore that. You know, but you can sort of do that. You can do that as well. But again, it's if you have a strategy and you have more of a plan of what you want to convey and then how you want to convey it. You know, what would that mean? Like you're doing the characters for you know Inside Out, right? How would you do it? So you'd say like, well, how would I display disgust and how would I display anger and how would I, you know, and then that comes down to your individual choice. But you also want to do something that works with everybody else, that everybody else would understand, right? So you don't want them to be confused. You don't want to be trying to convey anger and have them think it's like you know, disgust or whatever. You know, it's a very tricky thing. In portraits and paintings, it's the same. It's exactly the same. You've got to decide on what you want to convey first. If you don't know what you want to convey, you got to figure that out first. But then once you figure that out, then you got to decide on how you're going to get that across, and you convert it to a technical choice. So you say, I'm going to do this with the values and the edges to emphasize this about that person. And what's really interesting is there were some portrait artists that took a look at that painting of my mother-in-law that I did. And when they took a look at that, there were a bunch of the portrait artists. I didn't know if anybody was going to kind of pick up on some of the stuff that I did. And they were all like, oh, you know, she must be really fiery and she must be kind of feisty. But I was like, yeah, she is. I was like, you picked that up from me? They said, oh yeah, because you did this with the edges, and people really picked up on it. Like they really picked up on it. I was amazed actually. I did not think that was going to happen. So people will see it, especially artists. They'll see it. It's like when we look at movies as artists, we look at it differently than somebody who doesn't, make art. We look at it and we're like, oh my gosh, did you see how the colors shifted in this one scene? Because that's when the movie started like taking a dark turn or whatever. And we start to see things that way, and we process things that way. But the average person is just sort of it's experiencing the art as they go, and not really thinking about that. They're just sort of enjoying the ride. But we have to actually understand what is causing that, so that we can then re-engineer it for our work and spit it back out so someone else can get it. So that's a very tough thing. It's a tough thing, and yeah, I think with portraits, like getting the essence of a person, I think one of the things I would say that's really important is you've got to at least, like, this is not perfect, this likeness, but it's got to be close. It's got to be close, or it won't look 100% like the person. I say that, but I'm sure there's examples of people who have like strayed from the likeness and still captured the character of the person. But it's going to be hard generally for a person to sort of accept that this is like a good version of that person if it doesn't look like them. You could draw a panther and say, this is you. You're a panther, and people might people might it might resonate with people, but the average person will be like, what? I'm not a panther. Like, well, I mean, you're sleek and you're this, and like, oh, okay. They'd be like, okay, it would not quite resonate. So, but you just, you have to. It's a sweet spot with each individual painting, and it changes from painting to painting. It's tricky. It's very, very tricky. I think that's probably one of the hardest things is like taking that emotional side and making it a clear statement, a clear and emotional statement, but without making it trite and without it's very difficult, very, very difficult. So that's why we get so good with our technique. We try to get so good with our technique that the rest of it sort of that a lot of that becomes subconscious, so we can be thinking about all that stuff. If I have to think like, oh man, like, if I was super worried about getting this portrait to look human, like I couldn't even get it to look human by the end of this, I would probably be focused on the wrong things. Be focused on, like, if I was really worried about not being able to do it, it would throw me for a loop and would bug me. I had to really focus on that, because I mean, I've got to talk at the same time. I've got to hear what you guys are saying, respond, talk about things, paint, make these problem solve, and do all that. And so if that wasn't part of my subconscious at this point, then it would be tough. If a lot of this wasn't part of my subconscious, and I don't know if you've ever tried to talk and paint. It is a learning experience. It really is. Like I definitely don't do as well when I talk and paint. I definitely don't do as well, but it is something that you just have to learn. Kids have helped me with that though. My kids have helped me because they come down and they interrupt me, and you just get used to interruptions from your children. So they interrupt every second. So you just start to learn, like, hey, I just got to move forward regardless of whether I feel distracted or not. It's like I think a bomb could be going off now, and I would be like, still moving forward. Let me just put these strokes down. My wife would be like, Violet said they broke their leg, and I'd be like, okay, well, just give me a sec. I'm just putting this last stroke down. No, I wouldn't do that. Maybe not. I did hear a story that Erasmus, like, he was so, not Erasmus, I mean, Archimedes was so into his math that there was a raid, and they came in, and he just like yelled at him. It was like, I can't remember. It was like something like the Greeks invaded or Rome invaded. I don't know what it was. I can't remember. But anyways, he was working on his math, and they came in and they had swords in their hand, and he was like, "Can you guys please just keep it down? I'm trying to work on my math here." Apparently, that's the wives' tale. And then they killed him. Like, he was just at his slate board working on stuff. So there is the side of that for artists, and I think mathematicians are sort of similar, where you get sucked into what you're doing, and that's actually why it's easy for, like, things to just go on autopilot. You're not thinking about the proportion, you're not thinking about the edges, you're not thinking about all that stuff, because we tend to go on autopilot. And when you go on autopilot and you're not thinking about, oh, how do I convey this in this person, or how is that working in the composition, or it's always a fight to stay aware, is what I mean. Like, there's always a fight to keep that awareness, and it's just tough. It's very, very tough to keep that awareness. It's a very tricky thing. Okay, let me go over some questions real quick. I'm sure you guys have some more questions. I want to make sure I get to a lot of this. Justin Gerard and his wife are amazing. Yes. Oh gosh, so good. I met them in person at LuxCon, and they're so nice. I actually bought Justin Gerard's wife. I bought a purse that had one of her paintings on it for my daughter. She loved it. It was awesome. Their stuff is so good. I mean, it's so good to see it in person too. Like it just looks so much better. But um, uh, okay. Would you prefer going full opacity or opacity with pressure when painting? Sometimes I want to go full opacity. Sometimes I want to alter it, but I always, almost always want there to be some option, right? So like if I can press, like I don't know if I would like it if it was always full like this. I can never vary the stroke like that. That wouldn't work for me. That'd be hard. Well, I could probably do it, but it would definitely be hard for me. Um, I think it would. I think I'd have issues with that. I need to have a little bit of transparency with the stroke, just so that the stroke can, like, there's so much like you can put and then you can fade it out like that, like an eyebrow or whatever. You can kind of do that. Um, and I don't know. If I didn't have that, it would be tough. I could do it, but it would take a different way of thinking. I think take a different way of thinking. Okay, so let's see. Why is a bit of saturated color between skin color on his cheek is some kind of light effect? Oh, yeah. So yeah, it is. It's a light effect, but also like this when it starts to turn away. So we typically don't see skin all in sort of a mid range, right? So we don't see someone's skin like all in the mid range. So there's people's skin are, if you look like in different parts, like especially with someone he got fairly tan at the beach, and so a lot of his skin, if you could just see it, if you could somehow see it in just mid-range lighting or something, it would end up looking more like this. So it's only lighter like that because there's a lot of light hitting it. Now, obviously, like the everything has a local sort of value and color and stuff like that. Everything has that, but so his is I mean, obviously he doesn't look like he has black skin or something like that. So he doesn't look like that, but he is sort of in this mid-range. Like if you were to look at him inside, right, inside like a room or something like that, it would look a little bit more like that. About that. So when you see that turning into the shadows, a lot of that is, I mean, there's some other things along those lines too, like going through that cheek of the skin, that skin of the cheek, and all that stuff. But in general, you would see that most things look fairly warm like that, and sort of that color when you are just in mid-range lighting. So yeah, I think it is sort of an effect of the light somewhat. It's multiple things probably happening at the same time. I think. Let's see. Nice try, PP. You're not getting my soul this time. That's good. I think. Let's see. Somebody's saying. Um, somebody's. What's that? So, I think the shadow under his eyes, the skin there has a purple hue to it. Yes. So it's very faint on mine. Like you can kind of see. Like, well, no, you can't even see it when you do that. But it's sort of like a pinkish purple, like a slight purple. So I put that in, knowing that I'm going to come back over this and adjust. And then when I'm adjusting this, a little bit of evidence of that's still going to be there, and it's going to resonate there. So, and work because it's just a hint of what's there in reality. And I'm knowing that I'm putting it in a little bit more strong than I know it might be in reality, but that's because I want it to stay there till the end. This gets actually a little bit cooler as it goes down here. It's actually a little bit more gray. It's a little lighter, but yeah, it actually gets a little bit sort of cool right there. There's a little bit of a darker patch right there. This area is a bit lighter though. The shadow, it's ending up being a bit too dark there, and it's a softer edge up against here as well. So I'm adjusting that. But I still think I almost want to do this. I don't know if this is right, but I almost want to do this. Like just move this whole thing up a little bit. Like I feel like that's actually closer to what he looks like. Yeah, I think that is. I put the mouth down a bit too low, I think. So that's actually a bit closer. And again, I'm always thinking of the drawing. Even up to the very end, I'm thinking of the drawing. I'm thinking of that. I think I'm getting stuff in the right place. Something more like that. Now, his expression is a bit different, right? His expression is a bit different. But we'll work that out. But again, I want interesting strokes for this too. I don't just want, to blend the crap out of it and get it to, and make it look like it's not painted. I want to show that it's been painted. So this darker value kind of persists over here. It comes up slightly right there. And you can see how slight changes, like, I mean, very, very slight changes will change the overall expression. I mean, they just completely will change the expression. It's interesting. It's really interesting how you can alter the expression. I mean, if I do this and just add a little bit to this, it makes him look instantly like a little bit more happy, you know. And he has a bit of that sort of a shadow right there, so I could probably get away with that. You know, but it instantly makes him look a bit more happy. It's amazing how that happens. Now he's getting some reflected light down here. Let's drop that in. Let's just put a little bit of that. Let's do that with this palette knife. Let's drop that in right at the edge there. See, once you've got that base down, you can put more loose strokes over top, and you've got that base down there, and you've got the general values in the right place, and the general colors in the right place, at least like an idea of those colors, and then you can put these looser strokes over top of it because you've got all that worked out. Now, you know, I wouldn't always render hair like this. He's got kind of this thing going on where it's like this is too light, so see, value-wise, I need to drop this down. I think part of that is because this background area, I could probably put something in for that. Just as here you go, something more like this. We can go behind there. Let's go behind there. See if I can go behind it. Yeah, there's a little bit of that. I used the background in some of that, and so we'll carve over those areas. But let's put in a bit of the background. And I like to give clues as to what was there in the background. So I'll come in like this and drop that in, and even I keep it very very loose, but I like to drop in little bits of that background and try to not match it exactly, but just try to give a sense of what was there, because I feel like it makes the whole thing gel a bit more, and like whatever was there in the scene that would be affecting the skin tones and would be affecting all that stuff will be there in the background then. So let's go back up top here. And let's get rid of this stuff. Let's actually go back to this brush. I'm going to go up and change it to clear. So I'm changing this brush to clear, and I can come back in and with that same palette knife, erase this stuff, and still have the characteristics of that brush, and then I'll come back over it after. There's some stuff right here that I could probably like that, and then we'll come back over top. And you can adjust this how you want, but I tend to like I said, like to get a little bit of the environment in there, just because it helps like the overall feel, but you just have to be careful that the vignette makes sense. Like you don't have, I want to imply that there's more going on outside this, but I don't want to make it too distracting or weird. So that's why I like to stick with the actual colors and values that I'm seeing there. But yeah, let's see. That's a little better. I could probably carve into this a bit. I think I have that up too high. This comes back, and again, this is I'm trying to get that effect for his. It's a little too light, I think. Yeah, the back of his hair sort of sticking up there. You can see I can place this stroke, and I really just want to get the feel of that hair popping over there. And one of the key parts of it is this dark value that separates it from what's behind there. I'll adjust this with my other brushes, but I want to come in and establish this first using a light touch here with that. It's the palette knife 1 from Kyle Brush. If you keep the right value and you have the right sort of breakup pattern and shape of this, it will read as hair. Just to let everybody know too, I will be uploading this to YouTube. I'm going to try my best to edit this up tonight. I'll see how long it takes to render and stuff. It's a big recording. But if you did miss any parts, you'll be able to look at it again. And it'll be up here on Twitch for a little bit as well. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to go back to some of your questions too. This comes over a bit. The hair comes over a bit. This is actually pretty tidy on the edge here. It's not coming over a ton. But again, it's like, what I'm going for here is something that's a bit more expressive, something that's a bit like kind of pushing the edges in a lot of areas. Still getting it to read like a portrait, still getting it to read like the person, but really just trying to like experiment with the type of strokes that you're putting down. And this stuff is much more simple to convey. And it's further from like this stuff down here is going to be further from the areas of focus. People are generally going to focus on the eyes, hands, things like that. And so this is further from that. So it gives you the opportunity to sort of be a little bit more loose with this kind of a thing. But you still have to pay attention to the values. You can have it be very, very simple, but there's definitely, and this is, if I could leave you with one sort of thing to remember, I was talking about how, you probably won't remember my statements because I've been talking for a long time. But if I could leave you with one thing, what I would say is and I'm not done yet, but I'm just saying, is to not confuse simplicity with accuracy. So you can have something that's very, very, I'm sorry, not to confuse detail with accuracy. You can have something that's very, very simple, but still be very, very accurate with it. And that's a key difference, right? So I can make this brushstroke really simple down here, but I also can make it inaccurate or accurate, depending. So that's an important distinction. Like just because you put in something loosely doesn't mean it needs to be inaccurate. And, just because you put something in, with a lot of detail doesn't mean that it is accurate, so it's just, you've got to, I remember someone saying one time, I heard them saying like, Sargent wasn't a good draftsman. And I was like, that's ridiculous. Like to hear someone say that he wasn't a good draftsman, because all you have to do is try to do what he did. And you realize like how hard it is. He was a very good draftsman and was, very, in control of what was happening. He was very accurate, a very, very accurate painter. So that was a key part of just like, what he did and how he worked. And I mean, he was very, very accurate. So he's loose, yes, but like I said, that doesn't mean that it's inaccurate just because he's loose. Okay, so let's see. Look at scan, it shows a little bit. Okay, good. Yeah, that's right. Okay, good. Let's see. That's a good point, Vicho, about the eyes. Being sort of the main thing. I need to add some shadows there too. In certain areas, I want to. They get a little bit sort of flattish, kind of. Hey, Alphalet, thank you for the bits. Where can I find your brushes to download? Okay. So Kyle Brush, if you go to, I'll show you guys because some other people might have questions about this too. Kyle Brush on the cloud, Adobe Cloud. I'll show you this because this will help. Okay, so I think this was the article I originally looked at. Yeah, so okay, so get more brushes apparently is where it is. Let's see. Is that up there? Get more brushes. Okay, so if you go to get more brushes, and then there we go, right there. That's it. So that's what you want. So, all right, here you go. So Kyle's brushes are just so if you're a subscriber, you can get it. I think you might be able to get, I don't know if you can still get his older ones, even if you don't have a subscription to Adobe, you might be able to get his older ones. It's possible. So, I'm not sure. I got them initially on Gumroad, I think. I think I got them on Gumroad. We were actually going to do something with, like, actually my textures class. We were actually going to do some stuff with Kyle Brush, and I think he must have gotten contacted by Adobe like when that was happening. Because we had talked about because I talked about working with him and having like, okay, hey, we'll showcase this brush. This is Kyle's brush here. And because I really liked his brushes, and I was like, man, I want to do something with you. Like, these brushes are great. And, apparently Adobe liked his brushes too. So they hired him. And I'm glad they did. But yeah, so that's where the brushes are. That's where this one is a Gua Sha Go Tilt. And so mine's such a mishmash and stuff like that of brushes that you can't really get them anywhere. I don't make my own. I do make my own, but not. It's not that many. I make like specific texture brushes and stuff like that. I don't really make a ton of different brushes because there's so many good ones out there. I just don't feel the need to do it. So I'll just show you some of what I have. So I have all like the Kyle Brush stuff. That's what I've been using here, like the paint box ones or whatever. This is Kyle's paint box. This is Kyle's paint box. A lot I use from there. I also have Gregory Rakowski, Justin Gerard, Houston Sharps brushes. Those are really good. He has those for free. Aaron Griffin has some great brushes for free. Man, I've got so many. And just for different purposes. And the one thing I will tell you guys is that Brush Box is something that I thought, there's lots of different options. Like Brush Box is not the only option of this. Like I started looking into it, there's a lot of different options. But brush box has been something that's been awesome for me, and it just arranges them like this. And the big thing is like you can search for different brushes. So I can put in like I don't know, like dots or something like that, right? And so I just put in dots, and anything that triggers that is gonna come up, right? So let's just use this brush for a little bit. So like this is sort of like a dot, oh, it gets, okay, yeah, there we go. I was gonna say zoom. Oh yeah, it's kind of a weird like watercolor because if I press lightly, it's actually lighter. So I can't really use that, but but um, but that's the idea. Like you can search in there and find stuff. It's really cool. So Brushbox is, I think that's on Gumroad. I think. Let's look. That's been really helpful. Yeah, this is it. This is it. And it's $15. It's a lot. Like I was like, oh, $15 for like an organizing tool. But I found it really useful. Somebody told me about it and they were like, trust me, just pay for it. And I think it was Kyle. I think it was Kyle from Brush that told me. He was like, you should use Brushbox if you want to keep track of it. I was like, oh, for real? I said, it's $15. He goes, yeah. He said, it's a little expensive. He said, but he said, if you can afford it, he's like, you'll love it. And I did. I got it. I was like, oh yeah, this is good. So I'm glad I got this. So yeah. So I mean, in terms of brushes, I mean, like you really can use anything. Like I just always, for me, I want something that achieves what I needed to achieve. So if I can lay down a stroke that looks painterly, that is a little bit more, like loose, not like it's something that I can have full opacity, but I can also have, lighter as well and render with it. Like I have all these like different things that I want to achieve with my brush, and if I can achieve those things with my brush, then I'm okay with it. I'm happy with it. So it's more like a requirement that I set out. And I'm like, in a certain situation or a certain, I need a certain kind of stroke, and I look for that kind of brush, and then I'll just absorb it into my collection or whatever. But sometimes that's only like a one-time use kind of thing. But the Kyle brush stuff, like the paint box stuff, I come back to quite a bit. So I'm going back and looking at the values now. There's some different things we can do with the values. There's definitely darker values here. This is a little bit more. It's a darker. Oh, so that's way too gray. That's just sort of like around there, like that sort of thing showing up. But it's a very soft transition into that area. And there's just a hint of a shadow right here. Just barely indicated. And I made him look a bit older. So you can see like the proportion is a bit off, so I made him look a bit older. He looks a bit older than he is. But that's okay. Again, goal is to keep everything accurate, but to have much more expressive strokes and to build it up in that way. And you can do this with anything. Like you can do this with an illustration, a concept, or whatever. If you build it up in that manner, it's gonna read nicely. And if you want that effect, if you want that painterly effect, I kind of took it to the extreme on this one. Like really try to get kind of that painterly sort of chunky look. But I oftentimes will send people a digital painting that I've done, and they'll ask me, they'll if they don't know, it's pretty obvious if somebody's painted digitally. But if you haven't painted digitally, people will ask me all the time. They'll be like, oh, is that in oils? I'm like, nope, not in oils. I'm like, what? So if you work with a higher opacity and you are aware of what you're doing, you get things locked down, and you're more purposeful with your strokes, you can find that you can get things to look pretty direct. This is a darker value in here. Down here can be pretty loose. This area can get a little bit darker. I want to make sure that I covered the questions that you guys may have. I want to get all the remaining questions before I finish up here. So yeah, so I can work in this way and make this whole thing a little bit more loose like this, and that sort of thing. You can work this way, or you can see the way that I've worked down here, with this, and make this like this is more of a smooth like rendered style where there's much more transition, and it just depends on what you want to achieve. That's the thing. It just depends on what you want to achieve. So if you want something that's a little bit rougher, that is a little bit shows the strokes a bit more, you would sort of function in this way. And if you want something that's a bit more expressive like that, you can take it as far as you want, or just do a combination. Like just have a couple areas where it's a little bit loose like that. Just a couple areas where it's loose, and that's fine too. However you would want to do it, but there's different ways you can work. And so I kind of wanted to show you a little bit of a different method this way, because a lot of times digitally people don't necessarily work this way. And so doing an expressive portrait and kind of conveying the most you can with the while keeping things really simple is tough. And this is much more like how an oil painter would function. but digitally it sometimes is not the way that people would function. So not perfect proportion wise. There's lots of adjustments I can make. The head got in, it's a little bit of a different shape, especially as I come back here. Whatever, that's fine. I'm not too worried about that because really, like I said, the whole goal of this was to showcase how to get those kinds of strokes and how to proceed with that. And so that's really the goal. And likeness isn't everything too. You can, it's you can stray from that. And Sargent actually did stray from that. Even portrait painters like Sargent, people like that, they would stray from it on purpose sometimes. But yeah, so you can see like there's the two different styles. Like you've got this down here, which is more redder than you have this. And like I said, you can do a combination of both. You don't have to do one or the other. So you can keep it loose and still convey things and have all that work. Now let me get the last questions in here. Okay. I've been watching and painting you while caring for my 4-year-old and 2-year-old. Earlier, I asked about extempore and whether you've tried it. If you answered, I missed it. Okay. I have not tried. Actually, I have tried egg tempera. Egg tempera is very similar to like gouache or acrylic. It's kind of like a mix of gouache and acrylic, I think, or something like that. It's something like that. I think is how I would say it. But I think his eye. I think as I'm looking at this, I'm going to finish that sentence in a second. I think this eye could actually move like just a bit. Oops. Let's copy that. Oh, what did I do? Hold on. Let's move his eye just a touch. It's somewhere in between there. I think it's better where I originally had it, maybe. I think it's fine. I think it's fine. But you can see like even a millimeter makes such a huge difference there, or even like less than a millimeter. But yeah, I haven't used egg tempera, but I love Andrew Wyeth's paintings. I go to the Wyeth Museum around here all the time. He's so good. He kind of crisscrosses with them. But it's more of a place it and like the egg tempera is definitely going to be like you place it down and you have to you can't do as much blending. I don't think. It's trickier that way. So you have to you could take this sort of approach and apply it to that for sure. I think. Yes, yeah, oh yeah, you can get some crazy effects from that, and egg tempera is so interesting. It's just problematic when you have to clean the paintings after 50 years, like they get a lot of mold. But the colors, how I choose, I'm really for my portraits, I'm definitely basing it more on the relationships that I see in reality. That's definitely where I start. Okay, stay-at-home dad trying to make art on the side while having to homeschool and take care of a 5 and 3-year-old. That's hardcore. Like legit, that's hardcore because I mean that's a heck of a job. Just taking care of kids like until you have kids, like you don't. I've got a 4-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 10-year-old, and so it is a balancing act. Yes, I mean for sure. Like shout out to you. Like listen, everybody that's pursuing art, like that is has that situation like. They're struggling and you get like these small moments where you can work on your art. Like maybe the kids go to sleep, right? And you're like, well, now they're finally asleep and I can finally do something, right? That it can get very frustrating when you're working on that and you're like stuck and you just have these like couple moments and you can't spend the time that you want and it's tough. But I will tell you that you can accomplish a lot in a very small amount of time if you have the right sort of mentality and the right goals. So really, like a lot of the new schools and stuff too, like those workout videos and stuff, the new classes like the artist workouts, those are really good. That's kind of what my textures one is a little bit more involved in that, but the artist workout type of mentality is really good because what you have to do, if you have the right mentality and you say, I want to get better at art, and it's like I want to be an athlete, right? Well, what kind of athlete? Well, are you a rower? If you row, then you don't need to worry about like squatting a bunch of. Maybe you do. Well, I guess maybe rowing does take that, but what I'm saying is like you find what is important for you to learn, and then you really target that stuff. So you find out what's important for you to learn. You really target that stuff. Really create exercises that do that. So like let's say you wanted to be a character designer, right? Well, that's a different. Being a character designer is a different set of skills than being, an environment designer, right? Or doing environments, or even, of course, working in 3D or something like that. So you want to find your skill set, and what you want to do, and then specialize and find the exercises that you need to do to get to that point. So like there's different things. Like if I wanted to be a landscape painter, there's a completely different set of exercises that I would do as opposed to being a portrait artist, right? So I think that's important to distinguish and then find out what those exercises are, because when you have very little time, you want to target all the fundamentals and all the key things that you need to learn to be good in that particular arena. So if you're a concept artist, like there's a whole set of things that you need to know. And it could be different for a character artist that's a concept artist, or it could be different for a vehicle. You could specialize in vehicles or something, right? Then you're like very perspective heavy. Like, organic forms are not going to be quite as prominent for you. That kind of thing. So you really want to think through that. And I think it becomes, when you have kids or you have something that's just taking up all that time, it becomes infinitely more important for you to strategize. So that if you have 30 minutes, those 30 minutes that you commit to every day, those 30 minutes that you do, you're make sure that you are being super efficient with those. 5 minutes on ellipses, like this on this and this on the, and practicing this, and you will get a lot better. Like you can do it. You can do it. Now, it will take you longer than someone else, but you will get better. And it's just, I think specializing helps, and just finding very key targeted exercises. And people that have experience in the field can help you with that. So, okay, let's see. Okay. I would love to watch without my kids interrupting every 5 minutes. Yes, I'm with you. Do you know, I literally today, out of my mouth, like today, before I came down to stream, I literally said, why is it that every time I start, like I have a 4-year-old, I was like, it's like I'm talking and she just starts talking. She just starts talking. Like, I was like, she just waits for me to talk, and my wife goes, no, it's not that. She goes, she's just talking to me all the time. So that's why it's interrupting, So, okay. Yes, Ron and Vanessa Lemon are amazing. Saw Vanessa at that LuxCon too. She's a killer painter. Yeah, the eyes. Yep, Paul. The eyes are not in the right place. I don't think they need to be bigger, but I think they're wrong. And I think it actually is a consequence. So there's a couple of different things with this. So there's a consequence of the head structure of the head, a little bit of the head being wrong, and the eyes being in a little bit of a different shifted position that's not quite right. I almost want to like take this eye and move it like down a slight amount, but then when I do that, it's kind of a little too far down. Maybe not. That might work. It's wait a minute. Why did it do that? Yeah. So like, when I go down like that, it messes it up. Yeah, it moves it back up. Why does it do that? Oh, all right. I'll leave it there then. But yeah, there's multiple things that are going on, definitely. But yeah, there's definitely some things that would need improvement and stuff. But hopefully you guys you could see how when you build it up in that manner, I could keep going. Give me like an hour or two of just focused work, and then all of a sudden it will read it much better. And all of that could be resolved. But I really want to take pains with this too, to like try to keep that loose feel and really just apply those strokes like that. But you're absolutely right. The far eye's a little low. Yeah. Yes. So the placement of I think it's, so this is what I've noticed too. So this is what I've noticed too, like and I might have fixed it from when you guys actually made those comments, but and I need a fresh look at it too as well. But what you'll find is that like context will change things too. So let's say the nose is like slightly too low, which I think it is. If that's the case, then what you'll find is that will have an impact on how the eye will look. It's amazing how that will change your perception of another area, which is so weird. Like if I do this and copy and paste this over like that, move it up. Let's do it. Why is it? Let's move it over. Right, if I take this and I move it up, it changes your perception of everything as well, right? So you change that, move that over. Now that changes your perception of the eyes. I think that's actually closer to what his face looks like. You see I went down to the right a little bit. And so that helps with the eyes a little bit. That actually helps. Now the mouth is too low a little bit, stuff. So it's interesting though, but you'll see context actually can change. So what you might think would be the first thing that's wrong, oftentimes is not the thing that's wrong. It's actually, usually like the second or third thing, or something else is contributing to it looking wrong. So yeah, so it's interesting. It's very, very interesting that way. And I've noticed that about paintings, but it looks better now. I mean, as a whole, if we get rid of this, and look at it, like, at this point you sort of evaluate it to see whether it's reading, reading well. But yeah, good eye. Everybody has a good eye in here. It's good. It's tricky though. Like you have to approach fixing these things almost like a detective would. Like you can't show up to the scene of a crime and be like, oh, I found the wife's purse on the ground. She did it. She committed the crime. I found the husband's wallet. He committed the crime. You can't really do that. You've got to like get all the evidence and you may actually make the situation worse if you start pursuing the wife or the husband, and they're obviously not the one that did it. Same thing here. If you make a change when that's not what the issue is, then you actually make it worse. So it's very, very, very tough that way. But oh, thanks. That painting of my mother-in-law's arresting. Yeah, exactly. And see, you're getting that feel. There's a whole bunch of technical things that happen with that painting that cause that feel. Zombie cell. Hey, thank you. I'm glad you worked through that class. I'm glad it worked out for you. That's awesome. Yes, I do flip a painting sometimes. Actually, what I do more often than not, mix, is I will actually walk away. So obviously I do that right now on a stream, but I will walk away completely and just do something else. So for like 5 minutes, and this is where it's nice. I'm up at my house, like my kids interrupting me. It actually does help me because they'll come in and interrupt me, and then I look back and it's fresh, which is really good. But walking away does wonders for me, and I will walk away and just totally forget that I'm painting, totally forget all that, and walk away and just talk with my family or go outside or 5 minutes, something like that. Come back in, and then bam, you see everything like super clear because you get dead to it. You look at it enough, and you just start to come dead to it. And just like a sound engineer, they always would say they would take a break and put like earmuffs on or something like that and they would go out somewhere else, and then they come back and they're like, wow, how did I miss that guitar was so loud or this was so loud? I wouldn't have heard that. Like you have to stay fresh. It's really tough. Oh, but you are a panther, creepy Amy. Um, Chinchillas. I love that. You guys, your names are awesome. The chinchillas. How to get better at something subjective as composition. Okay, so when something is very subjective, I agree with you there. It's very subjective. You, I think the way to get better is to understand find a painting where you know what the artist intended, right? You know what the artist intended. You know what they want to get across. So maybe find illustrations for a story where you know what they're trying to get across in that scene, or look at something like Pixar, where they're really going to be very clear about what they're saying, and then you look at the decisions they made to get there. So you say, hey, this is what they wanted to get across in this composition. They wanted it to be dark. They wanted it to be like if you look at like what's the Wreck-It Ralph, like the candy area, what's it called? Candy air. I'll just do this. So if you look here on Wreck-It Ralph, like, and you look at what was that place called? Oh, Sugar Rush. That was it. That was the game. Yeah. So like if you look at Wreck-It Ralph and you look at Sugar Rush, right, and you look at what are the choices they made here? Obvious ones, color wise. But what about the shapes? What about the forms? What about the edges? What about the values? All of that. What different compositions. Then you look at like Piotr Yablonsky, right, and it's like let's go to the other side of the aisle, right, and you look at this. What choices did he make in this? These are the extremes, right? So these are the extremes, but you get a handle on how people think when you start to do that, and you start to look at their choices they made. And I have found that it's most helpful to look at the extremes, to look at all the way on one side and look at it all the way on another side, because that's going to be the more obvious choices, and then you can sort of find things that are in between. So for me, what's something as ambiguous as that? That's pretty funny. I like to just see how other people did it. So see it a little bit more fresh. Looking at this face, a little bit more fresh. Um, okay. Oh yeah, yeah. I think Sam will probably like it. I don't know. When I paint him, he kind of is like a lot of times is like, Hey Sarah, thank you. I'm glad it looks amazing. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Okay. Okay. Let's see. I drew this with two brushes. So I used this brush, so everybody knows, the Kyle brush, gouache, a go-go tilt. I gotta be honest, I would use that brush even. I mean, just based on the name, gouache, a go-go tilt. Like, I'm sorry, that's just gouache, a go-go tilt. It sounds like a song. It sounds like a Steely Dan song or something. And so I would use I use that quite a bit, and I used this one, which is the palette knife, the paint box. I think I may have used another brush in there really quick, but those are the main ones. This is the palette knife, like the paint box one. And yeah, I've used that pretty much in all different places there. So you can download all these from Kyle Brush on the cloud. Do I have that up? Do I have that window up? Do I have that? Yes. So here, if you go here, you can see like on Adobe, it's here. This is what we were talking about earlier. So, all right. Yeah, this is gonna stay on Twitch. I'm also gonna post it on my YouTube. So. Oh yeah. Mr. Adam. I thought it was like Take on Amsterdam, but it's Mr. Adam, which is hilarious. Yeah, the journey of an absolute rookie. That was me. Yeah. Who knew? Posted all my garbage with would end up being inspiring. I never thought that. That's for sure. Um, it will take a long time to upload the YouTube video because YouTube has to process it before I can give you the link. They have like a massive time where they're processing it and stuff like that. Um, uh, but I'll, you know what? If it goes up and I'm able to get it up there because I have to edit it too. I want to edit the video and take out some of the parts. Like there's just a couple parts where like Twitch went down and I want to take that out. So um, let's see. What's this? Oh yeah, there's a mega pack. Oh yeah, just posting up the mega pack. Gotcha. There you go. Yeah, then you can download that right from Adobe too. So let's see. I'm trying to get a likeness you first starting out loose and building towards accuracy. Yes, I do. I like to start out loose like that and build towards it because that way I'm okay shifting with it, shifting things. If I start out really, really tight and do that, inevitably I'm gonna have to move it anyways. And when I have to move it, it's um, it's like this is what I should say. Like if I start really tight with a drawing like that, I trust the drawing too much. So I trust the drawing too much, and I kind of move forward. Either that happens, or I don't trust the drawing, and I have to end up moving it anyways. So if I have to move it once I have to paint on anyways, I might as well just do it from the get go. So just paint loosely from the get go. So I like to kind of bring it into focus with something like this. Sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes you have to keep things where they are, and you can't do that. But in general, that's what I like to, with this kind of a study, I like to, and you see, like, there's issues come up, right? Like the eye might be a little bit off, like, you can adjust that. The more time I have with this, I might come back the next day, look at it and say, ooh, I'll tweak that and adjust that, and change that, and I'll see it much more fresh tomorrow. So, but, so you have issues, but the nice thing about digital is you can work that way, and you don't suffer at all. You don't suffer at all. If I did this in oils and I had to move that stuff up, I'd have to be really careful during the process. I'd really have to be focusing and really stay aware. I have to walk away a lot, come back, really, because you don't want to move that stuff up. You can cut the canvas, I guess, and move it up, but you don't want to do that. So, Magpie Dragon. Oh yeah. Oh, you're just saying thanks for the for the link. Okay, yeah, that's right. That's a good link. Um, Winged Dante. Hey, thank you so much. I'm glad it's been informative. It was fun. I got more coming all day tomorrow. I've got, you guys want to see my schedule? It's right there. It just came up, or it's up a little bit further. I'm going to be talking about how to get into oil painting, like what you want to do with the materials. Yeah, and then textures in the afternoon on Saturday. And then Sunday is, what am I doing? Oh, yes. Sunday's going to be a fun day. Oh, wasn't that in a song? That's my fun day. It's a Monday. Yeah. Just a manic Monday. That's right. You guys have no idea. You probably have no idea what I'm talking about. um, but, uh, but, um, but yeah, so Sunday, I'm going to start with the sketch. And then what I do on my stream a lot is like, I'll just sort of, I just like to have fun and like build a character. It started off where I would do a texture study and then we kind of turned the texture study into characters. And I showed you guys that progress of all my textures. I'll show you again. And you can see a lot of them we've turned into characters and I put them in there just for fun. So there's like this weird Pac-Man that's like got a leg on it. I can't remember what we were talking about there. But look at the giraffe, right? So we turned the giraffe into that, and this grape. My son was telling me what to do with this grape, and so I'm going to start with a sketch, just a fun little sketch, and we're just going to talk and have fun and explore ideas and maybe if you guys have an idea for something that you want, I'll grab a reference and talk about how to utilize that reference and stuff. And yeah, I mean, like you can see, like I've got weird stuff and yeah, like this. Here's an example. This is a friggin' bird's throat right here, and this is what I just turned into some weird. I don't even know. Like that happened on the stream, I'm sure. So we have fun with that. So that's what we're doing on Sunday. Oh, that squeaky chair. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Sketchy. You know what? I will spray that with WD-40 before tomorrow. It's so annoying. I know. I'm sorry. I don't even notice it now, but I apologize. Oh man. Thank you everybody for the follows, by the way. Thank you. I appreciate it. Let's see here. Okay. Good. Thank you guys. I'm glad you guys liked it. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, your 5-year-old is the same thing. You can't concentrate. Exactly. Hey, thanks, Chocobo Chick. I read that wrong. Chocobo Chick. Yeah, thank you. Good. I'm glad. So I love teaching. I've been teaching for a while, so like certain things, I try to think about the way to describe it to someone so it makes sense, and because that's the way it sticks. It sticks if you get a good analogy, it will really stick. Like that just it's never a one-to-one. Like you can't ever do it one-to-one, but it just helps it stick. So yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. This was a blast. This was really fun. Hopefully everybody learned something from it. And like I said, I'll be posting this up on YouTube. I'll edit just those little parts out where where Twitch went down for some reason, but it was pretty good after about 2 o'clock. It was pretty good. So At least maybe a couple times, but thank you guys. Thank you for the awesome questions. Thank you for your interest. And I'll be back tomorrow, 9 o'clock Eastern time, for the oil painting discussion, just talking about all that. And you guys saw my schedule; you can check all that. So stop back in again if you want. But you guys are awesome. Thank you. This was really really fun. And to be honest, I didn't know. It blows my mind to have like 500 people in here, 400 people in here, because that's not normal for my streams. You know, I'll stream and it's like 30 to 50 or something like that. You know, and then probably 15 to 20 are talking. You know, so yeah, thanks. That kind of blew my mind. Very very cool. So we'll try to keep it going even after Lightbox. It'd be fun to keep going if people are interested. So thank you guys, and I will catch you guys tomorrow. Everybody for the stream. Enjoy Lightbox in general. I just want to tell you guys, like, have a blast. Go in there, look at all the different artists, buy all their stuff, and make sure you catch the demos that you want. Get in there and draw with some people that want to draw with you, and on those canvases, and have some fun. Just explore it and enjoy it, and yeah, this was a blast. So I'm looking